All right, let's look at type. So this being digital illustration and typography, it's a vast subject that I will try to cover as much as I can with it. So with type, obviously the way that you get to it first is through using the T here, or you can press T. You can just click on the screen and you will get your basic lorem ipsum. You can also choose a size and you can put text within that. If, say, if you wanted to increase and have more text in here, you can't just increase it like so. You have to convert it into a thing called an area type. And this way you should be able to increase the size. You will have to double click in there and you can start adding more and it will behave just like the other. So that's a weird thing. Same thing in Photoshop there. It does a similar thing like that. Um, so of course you can color the text whatever you'd like to color it. You can change it around. You can add a stroke to it. So you can give it a black stroke and we can see the effects right there. Some cool stuff. That's unusual. We can also change the stroke type on it. So we can increase the stroke here. We can change the corners so they're smoother. You can get something a little bit different there. These guys don't seem to work in this stage, but it's just the corners that you can change here. Let's see, what other kinds of things can we see? When it comes to the appearance panel, I'll deal with that a little bit later since that's not just related to stroke. So we can also change this. Let's make it a little bit simpler here. We can also expand this. We go to expand appearance. And then expand. And now we have no longer any of the type. So now it has become a path. So this is something, I'm going to undo that so we get back to it. This is something I want you guys to do if you're going to include any type so that I can load it up and see what kind of, how you wanted it to look. Because normally I would have to actually download the font that you used. It'll show up as another substitution. So the way to do this is you hold down Alt and you're in your layers. You click and hold and you move it right above and that will duplicate the layer. And then you hide your original one. This is so that you can keep your text going. And then you choose the duplicate one and you expand the appearance and you expand it and you fill it. Sorry about the dogs. And now we have this as an actual path. I can then ungroup this, and now have I ungrouped it? Let's ungroup it again. All right, there we go. We should now see all these little letters as their own shape. So we can go in and change it. I'm going to click on this guy and ungroup it. It's being rather recalcitrant. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Yes. So now each letter is its own little shape. And if we press A to look at the anchors, we can see just how each letter was made. So we can change a lot of stuff around. This is very useful when you're making your logos or you're making a design or anything like that. Just no need to use a font right out of the box. We have the creativity to be able to change it around any way that we want that might fit with design. Henry Lubelin was one guy that was just all about changing the design or using fonts as their own design, and we'll talk about that later. So we can do a lot of cool stuff with the fonts. We can change it around, do whatever. Let's see, what else was I going to talk about? Yes, so I talked about the duplicate and hide. I also want to talk about what we can do with, I'll hide this guy and we'll get the lorem ipsum back. So now it's text. This should be text, right? Yes. So we can also change various elements about the characters themselves. Okay, this is no longer text. It's still, I think I must have done that to the whole thing. Let's get it back. There we go. All right. So we can change the type without actually having to expand it or ungroup it or anything like that. It's good to keep type as, while you're working on something, unless you're doing some really crazy changes to it. Do as much as you can to get it to what you want it to be. So we can change the size of our font. Through either the top or the character panel. So you want to change the point size that way rather than doing it this way, because it can be a little bit, be a little bit consistent with your size. You can also make it upside down, which is really cool. Holding down Alt will increase the size of something, even a shape. Alt and Shift will keep the ratio the same, but let's keep it normal like that. So we can change the point size. We can also change kerning, optical. I like to keep it on. It just makes it look a little, I don't know, it considers the distance between the letters a little bit more. Sometimes, however, you might want to change the distance. You might have too much of a distance between one or another, in which case selecting the letter that's to the left of it, I believe, is the way that you can change like the distance on the right. So we can make it a lot closer, and if this distance is too little, we can add a little bit more distance. So you could go there, or if you want them to overlap, you can do something like that. You can do some. It gives it a rather playful look. What other thing? So we also have, if we have something with multiple lines to it. So say we have something like this. Wow, that looks awesome. That's really cool. We can change the distance between each of these lines. So it's also good to consider this, especially if you're doing something that is like in a comic book or something, because you want to have space outside of the letters so that it breathes. So the next time you're looking at a manga or a comic book, consider how much space it has. And sometimes they will have more space, sometimes less space, but they'll never make it so that, or rarely, because there aren't really any rules anywhere in design. The rules are meant to be broken. Rarely will it just get stuck in there and it won't have any breathing room. So you need to be able to see something and understand it, because design is all about conveying that kind of understanding. Let's see. So we can change the distance. We can make it overlap itself. We can also change it very subtly. So lots of different ways to change things. Right. Last thing in this basic example of fonts is getting a new font. So if you want to procure a new font, and like I said, please expand your font so that I know I don't have to download the font. We can change the font here pretty easy by doing a drop down over here. We can get new fonts. When you do your designs, try not to use Comic Sans. I had a professor over at Crane that said if anybody uses Comic Sans for their font, I will give them a 0. Which is a little extreme, but it was pretty funny. All right, so say we want to get another font that's not in here. So we have to go to the internet, to internets. And there's a lot of different places to get fonts. There's just a ton out there. I would go to, what font would I go to? Duffont, but I just tried it a little bit ago and it wouldn't load. Oh, there we go. Now it's working. Some fonts cost something, so be wary of how of if it actually wants you to pay for something. So with Duffont, you click on download. You get that thing. It's downloading. With this other one, Font Space, there's some good ones there. You can find a lot of neat stuff. And you can click right over here. You'll also notice when we go to it, let's load it up. So here's the Anime Ace. If I right click on that, I extract all. And Pokemon Solid, I extract all. And then let's look at it. So Anime Ace, so true type, different kinds of ways that the data are stored. And this one, let's see, it's freeware for independent, non-profit. So if you're going to use it for something that, you know, for a big company, like the mainstream companies, you have to pay a licensing fee. So, and a lot of times if you're in a big company like that, they're going to have fonts that you can use and you don't have to, you don't have to go around and download stuff. So let's see, this regular one here, I think the true type is like the full, no, it's not. All right, so we'll go over here. I actually don't know the difference between them. We can preview it, we can look at it, we can install it from here, or we can right click on it and we can select install for all users. It all depends, and it's downloading and installing, or it's installing there. It all depends on your permissions on your computer. So this was Anime Ace 2. Used to be that you had to load up Illustrator, close Illustrator and load it back up before you could actually use it. But now you don't have to do that. So that's pretty nice. It automatically recognizes that there's something new in there. So that's how to get a new font into Illustrator, and be careful with some of those sites because sometimes they have some spyware. And all right, so the next we'll go into some more complicated things like warping and text along a path. But other ways to move text around is by putting it on a path. So we saw how to just do regular text, how to move it around, how to scale it, etc. But if you take a path, so now we have a path here. Press escape to finish that. Swap the fill with the stroke. And text, if you hold down the T, you'll get a bunch of different types of ways of entering text. So if we do the type on a path tool, you'll notice that our icon has a little wavy dot behind it. So, and when you hover over a path, it says path, and then we can put some text into that path. You'll also notice that we have a couple extra little controls here. This control over here flips it to the other side. This control connects the flow from previous text, so you can connect it to something that had text, and I'll go into that in a second with shapes. This also connects the flow to the next bit of text. So if I hover over this, this means flip it to the other side. Just like so. Now one of these, yeah, so if you click on the actual line, you can move it along and you can adjust where it's going to go. But you'll also notice that when I'm moving it along here, as soon as I get over here and it starts losing letters, all of a sudden that little red square with the plus sign shows up. So more on that in a second. Let's click and hold on here, flip it to the other side. You can see, oh, it's not going to, is it going to do it? It doesn't do the same thing on that side, but still, it's the same thing. the same action that it is that we're going to talk about in a sec. Now, if I press A for the anchors and I click on an anchor, you see we have the Bezier curves. I can then still change the path and the text flows along with it. Good question. If I were to go in here, let's see what happens if we change the anchor point. So if we change the anchor point to make it hard, you can see that it goes down here and hits that hard anchor and then puts the letters over there. So it's not going to stretch it. Whenever you're doing something like this, it's not going to stretch it because it's not thinking of it as a graphical element. It's thinking of it as text. That's why the letters stay very, well, you could say pristine, and a lot of other descriptors. So if we want to put this back into a nice curve, we can go like this. Sorry about the puppies. Let's pause it for now. All right, puppies have been relegated. So we have the text on a path. Now let's do text in an object. So if I move this out of the way, keeping it live, just so we have something interesting. We do a rectangle tool. Let's put that in there. Swap this guy here. And let's swap it. Thank you very much. And then we click on Area Type Tool. So the Area Type Tool, you'll notice that it says the same thing, path, but we have a circle around the little cursor. So if I click right there, now you see that we have text inside of the object. If we did along a path, the text would go around the square like so. So now the thing also about this is that I believe that this path can only be used for one text. So that's an interesting thing. If we were to go over here and be like, oh, well, I want to put type on a path tool, I don't believe that it's going to add it to it. So it is not, it says, well, there's already text involved in this. We also notice that once I click off of this, that now no longer can we see the line around all of the text, because that line that we had is now specifically for the text. We can also go in here and we can rotate this guy. But now look how it's rotating. Interesting way how it's rotating. It's rotating considering that the text is always going to stay left and right, etc., in its usual orientation. However, we can change this to a different type, convert to point type, and we click on that. Now if we rotate it, all the letters are now moving around like so. So we can change the type of text. So point type, we could also change it back to area type. Oh, well, that's interesting. So it's not going to change it. Oh, there we go. That's interesting. Now it knows that it likes this orientation, and it's going to keep it that way. So enjoy those things, not as, oh, I should have known that, but, oh, look at what I found out. That's a good way to frame it. Reframing. Good psychological thing to know how to do. So we have that text inside of the area. Now we also have other shapes that we can do. Say we take a polygon tool, and we'll put the polygon tool over here, and we'll do that. And now you'll notice that we have, let's go into our text tool, area type tool. Okay, interesting thing there. So because it was a point type tool, I was not able to connect the flow. So I'm going to connect this flow here, and you'll notice that, and I'll disconnect that. So I want the type to flow from here into here. So this can be really, really handy if you're changing the text, if it's something that you're making that might be a portfolio or or some kind of flyer or something like that, and you want text to flow from one thing to the next without having to keep modifying the text, it can really help to make it so that you can add new stuff to it. So this, like I mentioned before, this is the flow from something else. This is the flow going to. So if I click on this guy, we get this little, and I move it just slightly, we get this little icon. And this icon is showing that we're going to move the flow to something else. So I'm going to click on this one, and you'll notice that it goes to, it has this line that goes to another one. A good question is, if I click on another line, will it go to another part of the object? But it will not. So we now have flow going from one object to another object. Now, if we want to add, if you want to see the letters go in here, let's go in here and let's add some more Latin. So you can see that it's going from over here to over here, and that text is flowing. So if I add non-Latin, you can see that it's flowing. If I select all of the type and I make the type smaller, let's just copy it and paste it. You can see it just keeps flowing. Now the thing I was saying about flow from, let's make sure, and notice that we have too much text here, so it wants to make the text go somewhere else. So let's make one more text going to. So we'll go over here, flip this guy, and then we'll click on this one, and it's saying let's do that, let's move it, and I click here. Now it's making the text go into 3 separate places. So neat stuff, and we can move this guy around, whatever. We go in here, we can add more text, and it's going to flow into the next one. So let's see if we can get this text flowing from. So if I let's do a star tool, and flip this. All right, so we click on this guy, we have the text flowing from. I click on that, and you can see we have the little text thing. And I'm going to click over here, and there we go. So the text flowing from. You can move the text flowing from, and going over to that one, and you can see how it's connecting all these guys up. And this one doesn't have enough text in it, that's why it's empty. If I were to add more text, it's going to flow right into that. So we have the text flow working just nicely. So that's a really handy thing to get to know. You'll see me just be like, does it do this? Does it do that? There's so many tiny little buttons that you get used to it after you've done it for a pretty long time. Where if you write notes, there's no shame in writing notes. All right, so let's see here. What is another thing that we can do? All right, so here is the text on a circle. So this was something I forgot to go over. Let's do circle. So I'm holding down Alt and Shift, and we have a circle, a stroke, no fill, and then we'll do type on a path tool. So we essentially already talked about this, but I think it's important to go over. If I click right on the circle, we get our nice little thing going on here. Now we can move the start and the end around. If we click on the line, but you'll notice that where we started is where it will end up, it'll stop right over there. But we can also flip it on the inside. So if I click on here, I flip it here, now we can see that we have our text, and it's on the inside. So if you're making like a logo that is around a circle, it's very handy to use this. You just click on the area, on the type on a path. Now we can also change, I believe, some of the, we should be able to change the height of where it wants to go. Let's see, show options. There we go. We can also change the angle of the letters. Oh, hey, I forgot about that. We can also do some superscript. We can change the height that it's coming off. Bunch of other little things. Let's see what else. So if we wanted to make another circle around here, say you wanted to have it outside of it, we can hold down, we can click in there, hold down Shift and Alt, and we can make another circle around it, flip it around like that. Now the reason I did that was because I wanted to make sure that it was, you know, on the same, everything was going to be around the same orientation, around the same initial location. And let's make sure that we are. There's our location there, and we want to put it right there, center. There we go. All right, so we have our text on the inside, and now we want to put some text on the outside. So I'll go over here, the area type tool, and now we have text on the outside. So text inside, text outside. I'm sure you've seen that all over the place. So there's a handy little thing to know how to do. All right, so the next one is really, really handy that I like a lot, that you're going to definitely, or at least you should, use in the text assignment. And this is pretty neat. You can use it in so many situations. So enough of the preamble. Say we have an object. No, let's not say we have an object. Let's say we have some text. We have all this text right here. So to make this example work, we want to make sure that we have a small font. So we have a small font there. Now let's make an object, say rectangle. We'll put it in front of the object. This is called text wrap. I don't know if I said that. So here you can see that the text is going behind it. So in this case, that's not what we want. So we click on the object, and we're going to make the text wrap around it. So we go to Object, Text Wrap, and Make. And look what it's done. Isn't that amazing? It has wrapped around it. So it's essentially said, oh, I don't want to touch that object. And it wraps the text all around it. And notice how when I move the object around, it adjusts. So this is really handy also for like a portfolio or something like that. You want to have the text wrap around it. You could have the text on the side, and then you could have like text going along over here. So say we had that over there. We have text over here. We can move this text over here, and we can have this cool text that could go from one to the next. Make sure that you put the flow into the next one. And you just move this text box around, and the text will avoid it. Or move this box around, and the text will avoid it. Now, since this is already an object, let's put some text inside of the object. So area type tool, we go in here, we click on this, it puts text inside of it. It's now just a text object. Now we have the text avoiding this text. Just, what did it do? Why is it, what did it say? Did it offend it somehow? I'm not sure. But anyways, that is a really handy feature in Illustrator, is being able to have text avoid other text. If we go over here, we could rotate this text. We can do some really cool stuff like that. Just getting some really nifty designs. And remember what we did before, where we turned it into a different type of text. If we go in here, we change it to point type. We can have it rotate around. Now this is interesting that I would not have predicted. So it didn't, because this area around here is, it considers it part of the object. That's why it's avoiding it. So there could be some ways to change that around. We could probably, oh, hey, there we go. I just changed it back and now it's avoiding the whole thing. So there you go. You find solutions just by messing around with stuff sometimes. Happy accidents, as trite as that sounds. So that is text wrap. And now the next thing I think we'll do is we'll be doing make with. So make with mesh, make with warp, and make with top object. So the first one is make with warp. Now warp can also be found in the effects, all these guys. So if we take text and we go to warp, we can warp it like so. And so you can change the amount of warp, and the first one it chooses is arc. But the problem is that it gets a little bit distorted. So in moderation, this can be useful. If you want to have something just be like, right across the screen with a little bit of an arc, that's cool. What it will do also is it will bend the letters. So it considers them it temporarily considers them an image. So remember how when we went with a path that it kept the letters independent. So that's one of the things if you're making a circle logo that that you can see on some people that haven't used Illustrator very much, that they're doing a circle logo, but each letter looks as though it's cut out and put on there. But you might want to actually have the letters bend, the bottom of it bend. That actually takes a little bit more effort. So that being said, moderation is best for this because it warps. It looks a little bit bad. It's like a Photoshop filter. If you're using something that is just, you're like, oh man, they used what's a good one? Oh, the pencil one, the sketchy one. It's kind of cliche. So you want to. The best way to put stuff together like this is like, how did they do that? I don't know how they did that, but it's all little tricks. So it's fun to figure out those tricks. So in moderation, it's good. We can also change these the different kinds of warping, and in moderation it looks good because you can see it doesn't look so good there. So the same thing can be done with that effect also with envelope distort. So this is what we're going to look at. Make with warp is the same thing. I don't know why it's in two separate spots. Perhaps there's some adjustments we can make. Okay, that's an interesting one. Yeah, so there's a little bit of difference. The make with warp, you can actually go in and you can modify some of the handles. So let's do envelope distort, make with warp. Let's bring it down here, and you'll notice that we have handles here. We click OK. We press A to access the anchors, and we can move these guys around and change some stuff up. So we can fix up some of the warping that that might have distorted our original plan or our original text, and you can make it look pretty bad if you don't do it right. So yeah, watch out about that. Oh, that reminds me, forgot to go over circles, around circles with text. So this is our make with warp. So if I go over here and I choose envelope distort and make with mesh, now we have a lot of different choices here. We have rows and columns. So with a make with warp, we had the anchors at the top and the bottom. But make with mesh, we have a choice of how we set up all of these anchors. The mesh tool also is similar to this. So when we play with the mesh tool, you'll see the parallels. If we choose 3 columns, we can click OK. Now we have all these anchors with which to play. So A, go to the anchors, we can affect these guys. And then we have ones in the middle, so we can affect the middle and we can get it to look exactly the way that we want it to look. So you're going to want, remember that when you're making these modifications that you want it to be legible. I think one of the guiding ideas about design is that it doesn't have to, because it's very difficult to claim that art has to so and so. But a lot of people want it to be readily understood. It has to mean something and have a, how can I put it? It has to emote something. You want somebody to feel something. What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to think of when they first do it? And it doesn't mean that whatever they think of is the wrong thing. Maybe you want them to think the wrong thing, and maybe there is no right thing or wrong thing. One of my favorite quotes of Salvador Dali's is, "Now you know the truth. If you act the genius, you will be one." So that's so him, just art in words. Is it true? Can you really be a genius if you just act like one? Or is it not true? I don't know. So anyways, enough pontificating. So that is make with mesh. And we'll do make with top object in a second. All right, let's talk about the make with top object. So first we need to make an object. So I'm going to make a little heart. Very simple way of making a heart. Just make a square. I held down Alt and Shift in order to keep the ratio the same. Let's make one of these guys have a stroke on it so we know what it's looking like. And we go into our pen tool. Let's select the object first. Go into our pen tool and hold down Alt, and we're moving it out. Now hold down Shift, and we'll move these guys straight out like so. And now that should be right in the center, like so. We'll hold down V for very beginning. We'll rotate it 45 degrees. Hold down Alt again. Move this out here. And there is our heart shape. So super easy. And flip it around, swap the colors. Now we have a little heart, so we are going to want to put some text inside of this. So I like to put a little text. I'm going to do big, and each one of these has to be their own text line. Time. Oh, I understand. That's why it's behaving strange. I had it on French text enter. And then I'm going to do the last one. Max headroom reference. All right, so we have that, and we have our heart. So we're going to put text inside of this. But I'm going to cut this guy up so that we can have the different types of letters and three different sections. So I'm going to make a path. I'm going to make another path. All right, so we have 3 different sections. Now the next one is Pathfinder, and Pathfinder it's kind of been made a little bit obsolete by the shape builder, but there still are some good uses about it. But if we click on divide, we can cut this thing up, so any shape that's on top of it is going to cut the shape below it. So now if I click on this, we can see that it's still one object, but it has these lines through it. If I go to Object and Ungroup, we now have 3 separate objects. So that's the usefulness of Pathfinder is making things like that. So we have three separate objects. And we have big time TV. So I'm going to take this top one, and we have to make sure, and I always forget if it's the text that goes over it or if it's the object. Let's see if it works this way. So we're going to select the letters, shift select the text. So I have big for the top one, and then I go to object, envelope distort, make with top object. There we go. So it's the object that needs to be on the top and the letter is underneath. And by that I mean looking at the layers. The next one, I'll click on the shape, I'll click on the shift click on the letters, object, make with top object, and I'll do the last one. And I can bring that back. So essentially what I'm showing you here is that you can take any shape and you can distort an object within that. So we have a shape here, or you can distort text in it. And the text remains editable, which is important. So if we put in some text here, make sure now here's a good example. The text is below it, or above it, so we want to move that below it. We select the object, shift select the text, object, envelope distort, make with top object, and now we have the text inside of it. So that is one way. That's another way to distort text while still maintaining. Whoop, yeah, there we go. Double clicking on that, we can actually go in and we can change the text. And we can add more to it. So it's no longer an uneditable kind of thing. You'll also notice that when I double click on something, it goes into a there we go. It goes into a isolation mode. So this just means that everything, it only works on that one thing. If we double click on an object, it will be isolation mode. If I go in here, isolation mode, I can change that. If I double click on one of these, oh, that's just text. Isolation mode there. So that can be the same with a path or anything of that nature. So that is envelope distort, and that's pretty much all the main ways to modify text. Of course, we can go back in here and we select the object. We can then expand it, and it's no longer text. Now it's just a path. Ungroup it and go in here. If we double click on this, we'll get into isolation mode, and you can see it's very different, and now it's all just paths. All right, another interesting thing that I want to talk about is doing something like this with filling letters with type. Now this is a little bit different than just filling shapes, because we have these extra little spots inside of the object. We have to do one extra little thing in order to make this happen. So this can also be really handy for the text assignment. So let's take some text. We'll do big, and we'll make it big. So there's the letter big. Let's change the type to be this. So if we were to put the letters right inside of this, it wouldn't know what to do with this, the inside here. But first, it's still text, so we need to expand it. So we go into our object and we expand it. Now the issue here is also that these are now what's called a compound path. So it includes letters or shapes together in a compound fashion. So we have to ungroup it. So each one is its own thing. It won't let you put text inside of a compound path for some reason. So it gives you an error. So you have to release it from being a compound path. So object, release. And over here, object, release. However, don't do it with a B, because if we do it with a B, this is what happens. You lose the holes. So instead, when you have holes with any of them, you have to actually cut. So we could do, let's see, I think the scissor tool might work. So we click and hold. Oh, okay, no, I know what it is. That goes only on a a line. So we use the knife tool, which looks a little bit like a saw. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to draw along here, and I'm going to cut it. And cut it. So this is what you do with anything that has a little opening, and what it should do is it actually took it out of being a compound path, because these shapes were inside of the object, hence the need to have a compound path. So once we have that going, we now have these three shapes that are ready to be filled, and we will go to our area type tool, and then we click on it. And oh, now the reason why it's doing something weird like this is because the letters, were 300 point. So we need to change the size to something much smaller. So let's put it at 7, and let's just do some typing. You'll notice when it gets around there, it's doing some weird stuff, but it's starting to get around it. So yeah, this is the Great American Novel that I have going on here. And all the text is inside there. So you can put anything in there that you'd want. Now also notice that we have our little red box over there. So our little red box, let's make it go into the next letter and to the next letter. So this is the text flow. So I click on that one, you can see the little icon, and I click on this path, and it goes into the next one. Now we should be able to click on this one and make the flow go into this one, even though we don't have the text for it. So now it goes from the B, I to the G. Sounds like a song. And I'm going to put some more text in there. Actually, yeah, I can select all, paste, 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 and there we go. So now we have the text flow going from one letter to the next. And that is how we fill letters. So the main thing you have to think about when you do this is you take the letters, you put it into, you expand it, you release the compound path if it's inside of, if there are no shapes inside of it, and if there are shapes inside of it, you use the saw tool and just cut over there, and that tells Illustrator how to do its thing. So very handy thing to know how to do. All right, that's it for now. That's a lot of different ways of modifying text, and I hope it's been interesting, and it should definitely help with your assignment for the next class. Thank you for watching.